If you want to take your book home, that's your business. If you want to take your test home, all you got to do is take this sheet of paper home and study it. This is a review. I'm a person that you need to learn history. I know it was a while back. Instead of you going, oh no, what is it over? Can I remember all that? This is good for you to write it down and you can remember it. All right? And I told you, don't be panicky over this, that, and the other. If you work, I'll go over it with you and give you the answers. All you got to do is write them down. I can't make you write them down. But you got to turn this in and give it to me. Make sure you get them done. If you don't get them done, that's out of my jurisdiction. All right, let's get to rolling. Next page. I'll start on this side.
One.
We've already done number one.
41.
41, I'm sorry. 41. Bueller versus Oregon. Women working, it changed their lives. If you look about this court case, women took it to court. It dealt with women working laws. Women working laws. That's what the court case was about. Limiting their working hours and all that, and it changed their lives. You don't have to put all that. As long as you know it dealt with women working, it was a court case. It changed their lives. Next.
42.
Progressive reform in education. Children must attend school. Children must attend school. Next.
43.
43. Roosevelt hero. Why? Rough Riders. The Rough Rider president. Remember, he was a big-time environmentalist. His first love was the terrain, ranching. Next.
44.
44. Roosevelt's achievements. There were a lot, but here's the ones you need to know. Panama Canal, Meat Inspection Act, Forest Service. Panama Canal, Meat Inspection Act, Forest Service. 45. Is that what y'all want next? I'm just asking.
Yeah.
All right. Roosevelt Forest Hound help prevent overcutting. Remember, he said cut a tree down, replant one. Overcutting. He didn't want to overcut. Next.
Just go down.
Yeah.
You girl ass, man. I'm not going to do that one. That's too easy.
46.
Makes like I'm just giving it to you. United Mine Workers strike in 1902. Better pay, less hours, recognize the union. They wanted better pay, less hours, and they want their union recognized. Their union never got recognized, but they got the other two. Remember, the great arbitrator, Roosevelt sent an arbitrator in. Next.
47.
Roosevelt, William Howard Taft. Roosevelt was unhappy with his leadership. Roosevelt was unhappy with his leadership. You don't have to write this down, but remember, Roosevelt said, I'm not running for president. A vote for me, just vote for Taft. He was a very strong, loud, viewed the president's bully pulpit. Taft was mild. He viewed it as a job. He didn't think he was loud enough. He was not a strong enough leader, because so he became angry at him, upset with him. Next. 48, election 1912. Wilson won because the Republican vote was split. The Wilson won because the Republican vote was split. It was a great reason why I made it. Next.
49.
49, Progressive Platform, 1912. Minimum wage law for women. Minimum wage law for women, workers' comp, women's suffrage. Minimum wage law for women, workers' comp, women's suffrage. Next.
50.
Wilson on trust, dismantled by the government. Dismantle them by the government. Next.
71.
71. There you go, because some of these are easy. We need to make sure we get the hard. Marcus Garvey, Back to Africa movement. He led the Back to Africa movement. Next.
51.
51, Underwood tariff. Reduced tariffs on imports, because the tariff was a tax on imports. Reduced tariffs on imports. Next.
78.
78, syndicates. Chains of newspapers. A chain of newspapers. Next. 52. Federal Trade Commission. Stop unfair trade. They wanted to stop unfair trade. Next.
Um,
53, W. Du Bois. Equality at once. He demanded equality now. Agitate, rave on, bother. Equality at once. The right to vote. Very educated. He was in education also. Equality at once. Next. 55. Why unions want immigration restrictions to push wages up. You see, immigrants will work for low wages. That's why they hired immigrants and children. Next. 5, 6. Socialists blame the capitalists. Socialists, remember Eugene Dales ran for president. Socialists, they blame the capitalists for the problems in the industry world. Socialists is basically about the government control. They thought the government needed more control. They blamed everything on capitalism. It collapsed. Next.
61.
61, while Russia aided Serbia at the start of World War I, Russia gained influence over the Balkans. So Russia could gain influence over the Balkans. That's that mountainous area over there. Next. 6-5, what did an AFL of labor gain from the war? To organize and bargain collectively. To organize and bargain collectively. And remember, the president was Gompers, Samuel Gompers.
What was that?
To organize and bargain collectively. Remember, during the war years, people didn't gripe or complain.
What number was that?
They didn't gripe and complain. They were worried about their son coming home. They worked, saved their money, etc., etc. So they felt like after the war, they had a right to get better opportunities and work more for money. So they thought that it would give them the right to organize and bargain collectively. And the president was Samuel Gompers. But anyway, that's what that's all about. Next. 60. Pancho Villa was a Mexican rebel. He came into New Mexico and killed some people, and Persians went after him, dead or alive, but they never captured him. Next. 72. Warren G. Harding wanted to return to normalcy. That was his slogan. Return to normalcy. But in the end, he's known for scandal and corruption. Normalcy is basically a time of healing and serenity. That's what he called for. It was everything but normal in the end. It was scandal and corruption because of the whole game. Next. 58. Platt Amendment. Intervention in Cuba gave us the right to intervene in Cuba. See, America felt like some countries needed protected. And some countries were inferior. They were not capable of governing themselves. The Philippines is an example. Next.
67.
6-7, irreconcilables. They refused to vote for the League of Nations. They refused to vote for the League of Nations because America would always be having to protect it. A lot of people in America thought the League of Nations would bring us into wars because we'd be the ones always having to protect it. Everybody heard of the UN today? United Nations. It's a group of bodies of countries that join together and stomp out a commandment or a dictator. That's why we had these wars with rules. Because all these countries join together, they sit and they talk about it, and they got to join together and decide what to do. It's kind of what the UN is. It's a group of this, and it tries to create peace, or they join together and say, hey, we'll all join together and let them, hopefully they'll scare the person and they'll stop doing what they're doing, basically. The UN today. Next. 59, Russo-Japanese War Treaty. No single power reigned in Asia. We wanted no single power to reign in Asia. Remember, there's a lot of great trade over there. China, for example. Great resources. We wanted no one to reign superior in Asia. Actually, Roosevelt won the Nobel Peace Prize over this. Next. What? 5-4. Booker T. Washington did not directly challenge whites. He accommodated whites. He did not directly challenge whites. He accommodated them. He basically told African Americans, show your worth by being the greatest bricklayer in the world. Eventually, things will change. But he did not directly challenge a white like Du Bois did. Next. 63. Why Britain cut the transatlantic cable? So all news came through Great Britain. It's a cable that lay on the ocean floor. Now we have satellites, internet. There was a cable that lay on the ocean floor. All news we got came through that. But once it was cut, everything we got was through Great Britain. And Great Britain definitely wanted us in war. And that's why there's Zimmerman Note was a prime example of that really happened.
So why did they cut it? So that they could only pick people?
All the news we got came through Great Britain.
So they wanted to go only pick people communicate about it?
Nowadays, you understand we have satellite, right?
Yeah.
Internet. Y'all know all that. Back in those days, there was no internet satellite. There was a cable that lay on the ocean floor.
Yeah.
And it gave us news from the other world. During the war, it was cut. That's normal. That's just what life happens in war. They cut the cable. They cut off communications. All right? And basically, the only news we got came through Great Britain, which Great Britain made sure that they wanted us in the war on their side. So we only heard their side. And that's what it's all about. So Britain cut the transatlantic cable so all information would come through them. That's the only way we got it, and actually you're not going to hear it all sides. Next.
66.
66, what did Russia do to hurt the Allies? They dropped out of the war. They had their own civil war at home, the Bolshevik Revolution. They dropped out of the war. Then you're going to see why we're mad at them in World War II also. They signed a deal with Hitler. But anyway, next. 64, the age of drafted men, at that time I think it was 21 to 30. 21 to 30 years of age. 21 to 30 years of age. Next. 70 who? Why states tax gas? Y'all know that today. We talked about that. Can anybody tell me? What do they do if they tax on gas today? I told you, every time you go fill up your car, that tax is paid to do what?
Construction, right?
Awesome. Road construction. A lot of money. Road construction. Highways, building highways, construction, etc. Next. 62. New weapons of War I. There was a few submarines, machine guns, and tanks. Submarines, machine guns, and tanks. Or 3, I think you need to know. Next. Getting close. 70.
Oh, no, 74, sorry.
74, auto industry, how it developed our other industries. I'll give you an example. There were tons, but as long as you know steel, rubber, and road, you're good. Because the auto industry, it created, so many jobs. It created jobs in the steel industry. It created jobs in the rubber industry. It created jobs in the road construction business. Next. 6-8, opposition to the League of Nations. It would involve us in world affairs. If we join in the League of Nations, it would involve us in the world affairs. We'd be the one always having to be the leader of it. And remember, that was the problem with World War I, the bad treaty. Remember Wilson's 14 points. His plan of peace, they were largely ignored. There was the League of Nations that stood out. And America was afraid that they'd always be the one having to defend it. And in the end, the bad treaty, which was Treaty of Versailles, they wanted to make Germany powerless forever, make them pay war payments, admit their guilt. They had no money. They had nothing. They were hungry. And America basically said, no, we're going to have to build them up, etc. The war's over, let them be. But that world did not want that to happen because they wanted to never have a military. They wanted them to be basically powerless forever. And then, of course, Hitler will rise to power, and he will stop doing all the things they're supposed to be doing. But anyway, so it was a bad treaty, and the League of Nations was in there too. Okay, guys, I probably gave you every